All right. Okay, Mary, we're going to get started here. So first of all, I just want to welcome everybody to our 5th Industry Expert Webinar Series, which we're doing all through 2020, and very excited about that. My name is Jim Zazowski, and I'm president and founder of Z1 Career Zone. And so for those of you who don't know anything about us, we're a career consulting firm. And really it's for those individuals who are either out of work or seeking career change, or even, there's a lot of young individuals out there that have recently graduated or graduated the last couple of years that are really looking for their first professional job. So that's a little bit about us. And let me give you a couple of ground rules for today's session. And so first, you're going to notice that your mic is muted, and that's really to avoid any disruptions through the session today. And then secondly, if you have any questions or want to make a comment at all throughout the session, please feel free to go ahead and click on that Q&A feature and share those with us. And then at the end of the session, we're going to do a Q&A and hopefully get to as many of those as possible, depending on how much time we've got left. So really, I'll tell you what, I am very, very excited about a couple things today. And the first is this, is really about our on-demand program. And I know some of you that are on this line are actually taking our on-demand program. Others have finished it, and others don't know anything about it. But really what happened is 18 months ago when we built our career curriculum, I realized that we needed to have another offering that was really affordable for anybody. And really excited about 3 months ago, we completed that back in March, 4 months ago. And since then, the feedback has been outstanding for those that are taking the course. And it's doing a couple things. One, it is now affordable. Okay, so it's a completely online program with modules online and then on-demand classes. And then secondly, it's scalable. And I know for a fact that, statistics bear it out. 71% of all professionals in the U.S. are either disengaged or don't like what they're doing. So, we've got perhaps a couple hundred people on this. So by all odds, 140 of you are either disengaged or don't like what you're doing. And we know a lot of you perhaps are on this call because of that. So I just wanted to encourage you, before I introduce Mary here to you, that if you're out of work, or you're one of that 71% of those I just mentioned, or perhaps you have one of your children just graduated and they don't know what to do, they can't get a job in their profession or whatever, just go to our website or actually email us at info@z1careerzone.com, and we're going to get you information about our on-demand program, our pricing, the objectives of the individual modules, the outcomes that you could expect. And so I definitely encourage you to do that. So now the second reason why I'm excited about today is I get to introduce to you Mary Lucas. And I'll tell you, Mary is talented, and you're going to see that. And she's got quite the story to tell you today. And she's, Mary's an author. She's a speaker. She's a people connector, as she would tell you, as I have seen. But I think the most important thing is that she's someone that believes that you can really get the best out of yourself and out of others to make this world a better place, quite frankly. And she has been doing that every day for years. So really excited about that. But I got to tell you, it's probably about, Mary, I don't know, it was about a dozen years ago. I was at this conference in Las Vegas, and there were 1,000+ people in the audience, and I was sitting there, and here comes our keynote speaker, right? And I'll tell you, it was amazing because we were all riveted. You could see the body language throughout the place. People were on the edge of their seats. There were times when we were laughing hysterically, times when literally, I'm telling you, there were tears rolling down our face, and it was absolutely riveting. And at the end of that, the only thing I said is, I got to meet this gal. I got to meet Mary Lucas, and I did. And since then, and this is the honest truth, I've bought easily over a couple of hundred of the books that she's going to be speaking about today. And I've shared that with every one of my kids. All of their spouses have a copy. So I've shared it with my family, with my friends, and dozens and dozens of business associates, because here's why. I knew it would do two things. I knew it would impact them both personally and professionally. And so, Mary's book is titled Lunchmeat Life Lessons, A Butcher's Wisdom. And it's really about the lessons that her dad, a butcher in Kansas City, Missouri, taught her at a very young age after she graduated from Kansas State University. And in Mary's background, she's been 30 years in recruiting. She lives in Kansas City as well. And she started out as a customer service representative, and all the way up in her firm, ended up in the C-suite. And she owes a lot of that to the lessons that she shares in this book that she's going to speak about today. And so, so very excited about that. She's also an executive career coach, and she does still speak engagements to corporations and groups and organizations literally throughout the world. So, I'm really excited about what you're going to get a glimpse of this book today. All right. And I'm going to remind you how you can get it at the end, but you're going to enjoy Mary. And Mary, I'm so thankful that you're giving your time to our audience today. And I'm going to Mary, I'm going to let you do your thing and take it.
You're going to let me take it from here. Perfect. Thank you, Jim. And as you were talking, I was already thinking about a couple of people I know that I think need to go through your online course. So I think I may be giving a little bit. You get book referrals my way. I'll give a little business job.
That's a deal.
So Jim, as you said, I did write a book called Lunchmeat Life Lessons. And I will say, many people say, why would you name a book Lunchmeat and Life Lessons? And it really is because it was a memoir and tribute to my father, John Bickelmeyer, who was a butcher by trade with an 8th grade education, yet he was the smartest man I ever knew. You talking about a career coach? I never realized it until I was, as my dad said, I was a little full of myself at 22 years old, and I was a college graduate, first generation college graduate. I was, my father had an 8th grade education, a butcher by trade. My mother had a high school education, stay-at-home mom, and I will tell you, at 22 years old, when I was looking for my first job, I thought I was a little above any advice or advice or counsel my father could give me. And I didn't really listen to the wisdom he shared with me until I think I got that first job in staffing. And I remember college graduate, Kansas State University, I get the phone call. I'd interviewed in the staffing company, and I was interviewing to be a customer service rep or recruiter. And I remember I got the phone call and I was so excited. They offered me the job. I'm saying, I got the job. And I'm screaming. And my dad was sitting at the butcher block table in our family home in Shawnee, Kansas. And he was sitting there, and I'm hooting and hollering and celebrating. I got this job I wanted. And he looks over at me and he said, "You got that job you wanted? You're going to go into the people business?" And I remember looking at him again. Picture this, 22 years old, completely full of myself. My father could never give me advice about how to succeed in corporate America. And he looks over at me and he says, "You're going into the people business?" And I rolled my eyes and I said, "No, Dad, I'm going into the staffing industry." And I'll never forget, he just looked at me and he said, "Get out of your own way, girl. You're going into the people business. Don't overcomplicate it. You're going to find people work and companies people. That's what you're going to do for a living. I'm in the people business. I help people put food on their table. Your mom is in the people business. She helps raise good, upstanding young people. I don't care what you do for a living, butcher, baker, candlestick maker. You are in the people business. And if you don't overcomplicate it and you listen to me, I might be able to share about how to succeed in the people business." And it was so funny. It was that moment. I will tell you, Jim, it was that moment my relationship changed with my father. Because I thought maybe I should listen to him. I was so unbelievably successful. His business, Bickelmeyer Meats in Kansas City, Kansas, is still a thriving business. He started it, and it's helped my brother done very well for themselves. If you Google Bickelmeyer Meats, you'll see a lot of interviews and examples about how well they've done and taking his legacy and carrying it on. And, not only that, but he was a beloved member of our community. I mean, German, last name Bickelmeyer, and he was voted the Grand Marshal of the St. Patrick's Day Parade in our local community. Doesn't get more German than Bickelmeyer. We all had these shirts by the old Bickelmeyer family, and we're waving from the flatbed as we followed the Grand. So, for me, my start in the people business wasn't when I got that job and I was going into staffing. It was when I was born, number 9 of 10 children to John and Mary Bickelmeyer of Shawnee, Kansas. There's my family there. When we said our prayers at night, we'd say, God bless Joan, Judy, Johnny, Jimmy, Joey, Jerry, Jeannie, Jane, Mary, and Barbara. And, that was my start in the people business. And I love sharing this picture and kind of bragging on my family a little bit. Especially I love when, you just take a look at my mom. I will tell you, I could have written a book about her called Laundry and Life Lessons, because my favorite place growing up was that safe haven, the warm mother's love, folding towels next to her for the big family. Name Jim, and she had my heart. Boy, the only thing I asked for when she passed away in 2000 was the needlepoint that said, mother is the only person on earth who can have 10 children and yet each child have all her love.
Ah, sweet.
The person on earth who can have 10 children and yet each child have all her love. That's the way we all felt about her. She didn't like the spotlight on her, though. She liked the spotlight on her husband, my dad, and her children. And when you see me sitting on my dad's lap there, I'm the one in the red Marsha Brady crocheted vest. I wanted to have a vest just like Marsha Brady wore. So I worked on that for the church picture. But
That's great.
It's funny because when I look back at this and I see this picture, I'm sitting on my dad's lap when I was always so much closer to my mom. Because my dad, I'll share a close-up picture of him. He was just kind of larger than life. He loved holding court at that butcher block table. And he loved, just the reason why I called the book Lunchmeat Life Lessons was because that's what my niece Amanda, she pegged it whenever she was sad or down on the dumps, and all the other grandkids and their his children would say, I need to go see Grandpa and get some Lunchmeat Life Lessons and I'll feel better.
Oh, cute.
I just think for me, it was like, that was, of course, when he passed away in 2004, I just wanted his legacy of sharing wisdom and advice and counsel to live on. So I want you to picture him. I'm going to tell a few stories of some of the wisdom that I share in the book. We don't have much time tonight.
Yep.
So I'm just going to share 3 stories. But
Great.
I want you to kind of picture him as, if you've ever seen that movie Up, if some of you have ever seen that Pixar movie Up, and there's that little man who has the balloons and he grows to the Great Falls, and he looks just like my dad. If there was a cartoon character of my dad, that Pixar movie, and the voice of that character is Ed Asner. And Ed Asner is from Kansas City, Kansas, not very far from where the meat market is. And, he grew up there. And I've always said, if they make a movie out of Lunchmeat and Life Lessons, the book I wrote about my dad, I want Ed Asner to play my dad, and I want Cameron Diaz to play me.
That's great.
So, what I want to share with all of you out there is kind of, you look at him and you kind of visualize, he had these dark brown eyes and he'd look deep into your eyes when he talked to you. There wasn't another person in the room, even if there were 100 people in the room. When he talked to you, he was talking to you. And as I mentioned earlier, my mom passed away in 2000. So when my dad passed away in 2004, mom had already been gone for a while, and it was Christmas week, and I remember we were all standing around the tombstone, and they were getting ready to lower my dad's coffin into the ground, and I remember it was cold, and the epitaph on his tombstone, along with my mom, is, to live in hearts we leave behind is not to die. To live in hearts we leave behind is not to die. And that was when my niece Amanda came up to me and she said, who's going to give me Lunchmeat and Life Lessons now that Grandpa's gone? Who's going to give me Lunchmeat and Life Lessons now? And all I could think about at that moment were my boys chasing Nick. The good news about being number 9 of 10 children is that your parents are really tired when you're growing up. So I got away with everything. They just loved me, and the bad news about that is that your children would never know their grandparents the way the other grandkids would. I mean, she was old enough to be my kid's mother. She's not that much younger than I am. And so my little boys are the youngest grandchildren in the family, and they would never know their grandpa the way these other grandkids did. They don't even really remember their grandma, my mom. And so I just remember being so profoundly sad. My grief overwhelmed me, not just because of my dad's passing, but because I was afraid, his legacy of sharing and advising counsel and, advice and counsel sharing and all of that would be gone with them. And then I thought about that tombstone and that epitaph: to live in hearts we leave behind is not to die. And so I took it on as a challenge, because my dad said something to me on his very last day that inspired me to inspire myself. And I did that. I inspired myself and I started writing. And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And what's crazy is I never intended to be an author. I always say this: I'm an accidental author, but I'm an intentional communicator. I wrote chapter 1, which was a story that I, started with sharing with you just now, is the story of when he's told me, get out of your own way. You're going into the people business, girl. And that's chapter 1. And then I wrote the last chapter, the story of his last day. And over the course of 2 years, I wrote all the other chapters in between. And then on what would have been my dad's 90th birthday, he died at 88, I had a real live book. It was a Kinko's spiral bound version copy, but I had a book, and I gave it to my brothers and sisters on what would have been my dad's 90th birthday. I had a big birthday party for him, even though he was gone. He would always say, if you don't have a happy birthday, it's your own damn fault. So I held a birthday party in his honor, and I gave my brothers and sisters the book I wrote about him that I intended for my children, my boys, Chase and Nick. And I was going to give it to them the day they graduated from college, and they were looking for their first.
That's neat. Yeah. Very cool.
What happened then surprised me probably more than anyone else, is the book just started taking off. And all of a sudden, all over Kansas City, people were sharing copies. And Dave Lockton, the CEO of the Lockton Company, is the largest privately held insurance company in the world, is based here in Kansas City. And he actually called me because he read the book my husband was carrying around at the golf club. And he said, I want to get copies for all my producers, 500 copies for all my producers. I want to share there's wisdom with them. And their meeting was at the Broadmoor in Colorado, not too far from where you are.
Yeah.
He wanted to share all this wisdom with his producers because he said, I think this might be the best business book I've ever read. And it's not really even a business book. It's a tribute to your father. But the guy built a great business. I knew your dad. I know what kind of business he built. And he also did it in a way that is how I want our business to grow. One meaningful connection at a time. And I never really thought of it that way. I thought about the fact that people would use his wisdom. As you said, Jim, earlier, it can impact you personally and professionally. Yeah. So, it was then that we decided to get it in a real live book version, and then all of a sudden it's on Amazon, and then it's, it's a Nook book and a Kindle version, and the Audible book came out last year, and I had a chance to read it. And so all of a sudden this book is out there everywhere, sharing my father's wisdom with people that he never met across the globe. I've had a chance to speak in Helsinki.
That's so cool.
Twice, in London twice. I've had a chance to go, all over the US, sharing my father's wisdom with people who never met him in places he'd never been. So with your listeners tonight, with all of you out there, I wanted to share a few of the stories, and I wanted to start with don't forget the comeback sauce, because I think the 3 stories I'll share: comeback sauce, find the like, over the L, and I'll share a few other little quotes along the way, or I guess I'll inspire yourself. These are the ones I'll share because we have a short time together, but I promise the book is jam-packed with one after the other stories like this. But the story that I think what resonates with so many people is don't forget the comeback sauce. So again, I'm going to go back in time. So picture Ed Asner sitting at the butcher block table with his Greek fisherman's cap on, although my dad called it a German fisherman's cap, the suspenders, and sitting there, all kind of burly voice and the big belly. And he calls his daughter over, picture Cameron Diaz, and come over. You're going into the people business, girl. Get out of your own way. If you listen to me, I might be able to share a thing or two with you about how to succeed in the people business. And that's when my relationship changed with my dad. And I said, oh, Dad, I'm going to listen to you. Lay it on me. Before I start my first day on my new job tomorrow, what do you want me to know? My first day on my new career. And he said, oh, that's easy. Don't forget the comeback sauce, Mary. You pour the comeback sauce on everybody who you come in contact with, and you'll be just fine. And I looked at him. Now, remember, I'm trying to be respectful, and I'm trying not to, that line, don't forget the comeback sauce. And I looked at him and I said, really, Dad? Don't forget the comeback sauce. I'm trying to be respectful right now and listen to you because I know you've done really well for yourself and you probably really could advise me on how to do well in business. But I'm thinking that's kind of a cheesy line. Don't forget the comeback sauce. And besides that, I shadow the people in the office that I'm going to work with on Friday. And I can tell you for sure, there's a lot of people that come in that office that they don't want to come back. I mean, don't have the right skills and qualifications. There's people that, I mean, they actually downright lie to you. Dad, there were a couple of people that committed to go to a job, temporary job, and then they didn't show up. They call it no show, no call. Dad, they don't want those people. And that was when my dad just looked at me, and I swear Jimmy was just so patient with me. And maybe it was because I was number 9 and he'd seen it all, but he just looks at me and he says, wow, for an educated young lady, you have a lot to learn. So literally, it's not whether you want them to come back or not. It's how you want to make them feel about their interaction with you. And those people you have to deliver bad news to. Those people that don't have the right skills and qualifications. Those people that have done you wrong and you have to let down or let go. You want to do it in a way that's nicer than anyone they've ever connected with before. So yes, Mary, everybody deserves a little comeback sauce. It's the way that you're going to make a meaningful connection, and it's the way you're going to make yourself memorable, because you don't know who's they're related to. The next day, you might be calling on their mother to sell them temporary help, and they're going to think about, oh, they treated my child right. Pour the comeback sauce on everybody you come in contact with. Make yourself memorable. Make yourself stand out. And I remember, I just thought, wow, that was pretty good advice. And then I asked him, where'd you come up with that, Dad? And he said, oh, I remember it like it was yesterday. He said, when I graduated from 8th grade, my mother died at the age of 42. I was number 3 of 10 kids, and I had to leave. It was during the Depression. I had to leave our farm in Eudora, Kansas, and go into Kansas City, Kansas, and work for money to help raise my brothers and sisters. And the only trade I knew at that age was to be a butcher. And my dad was a butcher. His father was a butcher. So my brother Matt and I, we went into Kansas City, Kansas. We started working in the meat business. And sister Barb, she went and became a nurse. And we sent all the money home to help raise our brothers and sisters. And then finally, I didn't have to do that anymore. They were raised, and I had gotten married, love of my life, and we had 3 kids. I had 5 mouths to feed. But for many years, I'd worked with Mr. Snow, and he was an entrepreneur. He had built his own business, and he had done well for himself. And I knew I wanted to do what he did. So finally, it was a scary time for me. I took all my savings and I invested them in my own meat market, Bicklemeier Meats, Kansas City, Kansas, right down by the river. And he said, I opened up my doors and I took 2 guys with me from Mr. Snow's. And it wasn't more than a couple of months that we'd been in business. And I came in one morning and the 2 guys were all worked up. They were by the cash register. Johnny, we're in trouble, they're saying. Johnny, we're in trouble. Dad said, what's wrong? Johnny, we're in trouble. We were at Mr. Snow's last night, and he said he has a plan to put us out of business. And Dad said, he looked at him and said, what's the plan? And he said, every time you advertise a price per pound, he's going to advertise 10 cents per pound cheaper until you can't afford to be in business any longer. And the 2 other guys, 2 other competitors, they said they follow the same plan. Johnny, this is bad. Johnny, do you think we're going to what's going to happen? Do you think we're going to close? What do you think is going to happen? Dad said, I just started laughing. And I'm laughing. And they go, what's the matter with you, Johnny? And he said, I'll tell you what's the matter. I think it's funny. It's hilarious. His plan won't work. Their plan won't work. You guys don't have to worry about this. We don't have any money to advertise. All we got is the quality of the product we sell, the roof over our heads, what little we pay ourselves. And then he said, wait a minute. We got comeback sauce. You pour the comeback sauce on everybody who comes in here and we'll be just fine.
That's great.
I remember Dad said, they said, what are you talking about, John?
Yeah, I bet.
I don't know. You figure it out. You'll know in your heart. When you look across, you'll know, do you think you gave this person the kind of service that will make them want to come back or not? And if you don't think you can answer that question honestly with a yes, then you need to make sure you get out there and you do something else to make yourself memorable. Don't forget the comeback sauce. Sometimes it's just a smile. Sometimes it's a nod. Sometimes it's just a little extra. You know, if there's somebody in there and you think they are having a crummy day, then they asked for a pound of ground beef. You reach in that cooler, you get a little extra, you top off the pound you've already measured. They watch you measure and you hand it over to them. You say, there you go. I gave you a pound. Looks like you're having a rough day. So I wanted to make sure I took good care of you. And so there you go. You'll just pay for a pound. Gave you a little extra. You deserve it. Going around the corner, Johnny will cash you out. Think about it every time. Don't forget the comeback sauce. And it was funny, after I wrote the book, Jim, what happens is my phone will ring and it'll be someone calling me and I'll say, good morning, Mary Lucas. And they'll say, oh, Mary Lucas, the author? You answer your own phone? And I'll say, yeah. I get invited to go places, and I'll never forget when I got a phone call from the Denise Daly, at the head of the Human Resources, the Institute for Transfusion Medicine in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She called me and said, you need to come. And I read your book last night. You need to come teach all our phlebotomists the recipe for comeback sauce, because we have a blood shortage here in Pittsburgh and we need our phlebotomists to know how to pour comeback sauce on so people come back.
Wow. Yeah.
She invited me to come to a workshop just on comeback sauce. And so I've had to figure out the recipe. This isn't the book, but I do think there's a recipe. It's simple. It's 1 part recognition, 1 part connection, and add a dose of the unexpected. And this works everywhere, in your personal and your professional life. 1 part recognition. You look like you're having a rough day today. 1 part connection. You wanted a pound, I gave you a little extra. You'll just pay for a pound. Add a dose of the unexpected. Johnny will cash you out around the corner. Now you take care and come back and see us again. No, we'll always take care of you. I don't care where it is. And if we had more time, I'd share with you exactly what kind of comeback sauce ingredients they put together at the Institute for Transfusion Medicine. But I can tell you there's stories all over the place of people that pour the comeback sauce, realtors.
That's great.
You know, so many examples. And I think for a lot of your listeners and the people that you coach, if you are trying to set yourself apart in this crazy life that we're in right now, of trying to get noticed when you're applying for a job, what are ways you can do that? Think about it. How can you pour the comeback sauce on the person you interviewed with so you stand out? What are the things that you can do to make yourself memorable? And I think there's so many different ways. I mean, I love, like right now, I love touch notes. You know, if I'm going somewhere and doing a speaking engagement, I'll snap a picture and I'll send it to the person who hired me for the speaking engagement and follow up. And you know, that's my little memorable comeback sauce, because it's just a reminder of the great connection we had at the time, and hopefully that we can connect again in the future. But I'm sure there's lots of ways. And again, short of time, and I want to get to lots of these stories, but don't forget the comeback sauce. I think you've used it yourself a few times too.
Yes. That's a whole nother session.
Yeah. Okay. So I do want to switch gears then, though. You know, I realize sometimes when I'm talking. Second. Pardon? Can you hear me, Jim?
Elizabeth?
Can you hear me?
Now I can. You're good. You're back.
Perfect. I know there was a slight little, I could tell you were kind of frozen in time. But I just noticed, by the way, too, as you are watching, we both obviously are book lovers, because look at our backdrops.
Oh, yeah. Read them all, Mayor.
Yeah.
Every one of them. Every one of them.
As we shift gears, though, I told the story about comeback sauce. I want to tell a story that I think might resonate with your listeners, too, about, you know, what happens when you're just overwhelmed. I mean, you know, I realize that we all have stuff coming at us. I mean, there's people problems and personal issues and change and uncertainty. And right now, so much with COVID and all of that. And then, I mean, right now we're trying to work from home and make sure our parents are cared for. And, you know, our spouse wants us to be nice to them, and the kids need us. And then maybe you're homeschooling and you've got all that going on too. And then you're trying to make sure you have work-life balance, and also this virtual work-life setting, and you have to be on all day and at work. And then they want you to go home and they want you to be nice to them there too. I mean, really right now, especially 2020 has been such an interesting year for people to kind of keep their perspective and keep their positive attitude when it's so overwhelming. I mean, I get it. Sometimes I hear from people, Mary, I'm not trying to make a lasting impression. I'm not trying to be memorable. I'm not thinking about comeback sauce. I'm just trying to get through the day. You don't know my world. And I will tell you though, that I think everybody thinks their world is so different than everybody else's.
Mhm.
Worse and so much harder and so much more challenging. And I think the thing that we all have to keep in mind is what my dad would always say to me when I got overwhelmed or I would get all worked up about something. He'd say, everybody has stuff coming at them. Just like this slide, everybody has stuff coming at them. The difference between you and everybody else is who? You. You can let it get to you or you cannot. It's up to you. And that's when, you know, I really learned that lesson, that the only way you can change how you view the world is to change how you view the world. And one of the most challenging times, you know, where I had to change my view of the world that really positively impacted my world in general was when I learned the lesson, find the like. So, you know, I wish I could see everybody who's on this webinar right now, but I only see you, Jim. So I'm going to ask you, you know, this is what I usually say when I'm in the group. Raise your hand if you've ever worked with someone you don't like. Okay, I think you got it. And then I always say, raise your hand if you've ever been related to someone you don't like. Raise your hand if you've ever been married to someone you don't like. And I raise my hand. My husband gets really mad at me too when I do that. He'll say, would you raise your hand when you ask about if you've ever been married to someone you don't like? People think you don't like me. And I said, sweetie, after 30 some years of marriage, sometimes I don't like you. I love you all the time, but sometimes I don't. And this is really when I learned this lesson, find the like, is that, you know, sometimes there are relationships that you really should get out of. Please don't take this wisdom as you should stay in every relationship. If it's toxic, if you really need to get out of it, you should get out of it. I learned this lesson though when my father said, if you're in a relationship that getting out of that relationship would cost you a price that you're not willing to pay, then stop finding what's wrong in that relationship and focus on what's right. Find the like. Mm-hmm. Learned this when I had this client. I mean, in the book, I call her Lisa Gray, but her real name was Linda Brown. So I'm going to fast forward. Now I've been promoted. You know, this is now 5 years into my career. So I'm not 22 anymore. I'm 27 years old, and I'm the branch manager of the Kansas City Penn Tower office in Midtown Kansas City. And I was with Audia Personnel Services at the time. It's now called Adecco. And we were one of the top offices in the United States. We were beating Torrance, California, who had the Barbie doll account, the Mattel account, which is based there. And we were beating Austin, Texas, which had the Dell computer account, which was based there. And we were beating those other offices. And we were the #1 office in the entire Audia network because we had the Macy's account. Macy's had a headquarters there, and they had a lot of buyers, clerical employees that they would order from us, and we would have temporary employees there. And they were one of the largest accounts in Kansas City. And I stole the account from Manpower, and Manpower stole the account from Kelly, and we were the third staffing company she'd worked with. Our client there, Lisa Gray, we were the third company she'd worked with in less than 6 months. And I knew I stole the account because I was the best salesperson in the world. And I realized after about 2 weeks of working with her that I didn't get the account because I was such a great salesperson. I got the account because no one wanted to work with a witch who was our contact. But she really was. She was so mean and awful, and she would scream at us and yell at us, and we all just couldn't stand her. She was so condescending. Like, I remember one Monday morning coming in, and this is before, Indeed and all the job boards, and you basically would go in, and you'd run an ad on Sunday, and then you'd go in on Monday morning, and there'd be people waiting in line to come apply for work with you. And I remember walking in, and we were supposed to have 16 people start at Macy's that morning, and I pick up the phone when I walk in the office, and I said, "Good morning, Audia Personnel Services," and the office is filled with people filing in to apply for work. And what happens, it's a bullpen office. There was only one enclosed office, and I hardly ever went in there. It was my branch manager office. And I remember I picked up the phone, I grabbed it right at 7 a.m. and the phone rings, and "Good morning, Audia Personnel Services," in my ear, so loud, you could hear it resonate through the whole office. "How and after you people over there, Monday morning, and you know my orientation promptly starts at 7. You were supposed to have 18 people here, and now there's 14 people here, and what am I supposed to do? Delay my orientation because you guys couldn't do what you said you were going to do?" And she's screaming at me. And I mean, I was just like, I could tell my lip was quivering. I thought I was going to cry. What a way to start Monday morning, right? Getting screamed like this. And the people are looking around like, what the heck is this place all about? So the next thing you know, I mean, I find myself getting defensive, and I find, are you going to get me replaced? What? And I said, if I could just get off the phone, I will find, I'm so sorry. Of course, and I'm finding him choking over my words. Finally, it's just said, if I could just get off the phone, I will find out where they are, and I will get back with you. And I hung up on my biggest client. I couldn't even say goodbye. And I remember we figured out where everybody was. One person was stuck in the elevator on the wrong floor. Another person was late in traffic. Another person's grandmother died for the 9th time. And another person just was in the wrong room. And I just remember we figured out where it was about 11:45 on Monday morning. And I remember looking at the clock, and I thought, I want it to be 5:45 on Friday afternoon. I was so done with her, and I was done with that place. And I just didn't want to even be there. And I remember called my dad. I knew he'd be home because he always took Monday off. He wanted a weekend, and Saturday's the busiest day at the meat market. So he took Sunday off for our Lord's Day and Monday for St. John's Day. I remember his name was John. So I called him from my bag phone and my little RX-7 sports car, and I called him and I cranked up Easy Lover with Phil Collins, and I get in my little sports car that I got with my bonus money from being one of the top offices, and I drove out there to the farm, and Dad was waiting. I said, Dad, I need to talk to you. And I start complaining. Lisa Gray is horrible. She's impossible. She's such a witch. She's just, how inept are you people? And I said, Dad, she's just so condescending. I'm talking all these negative things about her. And Dad looks at me and goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. You wanted my advice, right? And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, stop talking so negative about her. He goes, wait, let me ask you a few questions. She's your biggest client, right? Yes or no? Yes. Do you have a client as big as she is to replace her with? Well, not yet, but I'm looking on Hallmark. No, stop. No, yes or no? No. If you lost her as a client, would there be a price to pay that you don't want to pay? Yes. What would it be? I'd have to lay off our in-house temp. We'd have to, receptionist going on. Dad goes, okay, so basically, let me get the facts straight. You don't like your biggest client. If you lost her as a client, there would be a price to pay that you don't want to pay. So you got a problem, girl. I said, I know I've got a problem. My problem's Lisa Gray. And he goes, no, you have a problem. You don't like your biggest client. And your solution is simple. Find the like. Go back to your office and figure out what you like about her and work at it until you do find the like, because you better figure out what you like about her, because your problem is bigger than you realize, girl. I said, why do you say that? He said, because have you ever heard the phrase, if you don't like somebody, they don't like you? And I looked at him and I thought, that's impossible. I'm me. Everyone likes me. No, they don't. So they don't. I'm telling you, when you don't like somebody, they don't like you. They can feel it. They know it. Yeah. You got to change the way you think and act and talk about her. And in the book, I share the whole story about how I went back to the office and we had a meeting and we worked at finding the like, and we totally transformed our relationship with her. And, it eventually got to the point where I didn't just like her, I loved her. So if you have a chance, please read that chapter in the book. Like I said, we don't have enough time to share all the stories. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that I think the find the like one is the one that resonates with so many people. Because, I think that we all have people in our lives that we, it's important that we keep that relationship. And instead of focusing on what's wrong with the relationship, practice the art of appreciative inquiry and focus on what's right. And, I think the challenge for all of you guys is, who's your Lisa Gray? I mean, everybody, I always say, does everyone have a Lisa Gray right now that they're thinking of? And I always say, it's true. I have 5 right now. I'm related to 3. I'm from a really big family. And so I think, we all have Lisa Grays in our life. So working on those relationships in a positive way and really figuring out what you like about someone will make the relationship both ways so much better. And then, Jim, there's so many other stories. Don't take life so seriously. You're never going to get out of it alive anyway, or enjoy the ride, or Dad would say, celebrate every chance you get. Nobody makes you happy but yourself. If you don't have a happy birthday, it's your own damn fault is my absolute favorite. My birthday's March 24th. Remember it, write it down. I celebrate it big. So I'd love to hear from you. But and I think don't act like it's your due. Take every chance to say thank you. That's one of the ones that I think is part of, I think the recipe for comeback sauce too, is just saying thank you sometimes is just such a meaningful thing to people when you really mean it, And the last bit of wisdom I want to share before we go into the questions, and like I said, many times, Jim, when I'm doing these speeches in front of the big groups like you've seen, I'm an hour and a half sharing story after story after story. But for this group, I thought sharing the comeback sauce and the find the like are both things that I think might resonate with if you take them to heart, really might help all of you in your career, and not just in your career, in your personal life as well. But I think the bit of wisdom that I think is hardest for me to share the story is the one that inspired all of this for me, the one that inspired me to write the book and to keep my father's legacy alive. And that's the last bit of wisdom I'm going to share with you guys tonight. And that's the story of his last day. So again, I want to paint a picture for all of you. We lost my mother in 2000. We lost many family members. When you're from a family as big as mine, death is part of life, and you realize that very early on. And yet, when we were about to lose my father, I think it was almost unbearable for all of us. And it was a Christmas week, and it was a challenging time for our family. My sister Joan was very ill as well. And so I found myself accidentally alone with my father in the intensive care unit when he was given hours to live. They told him he was going to die from congestive heart failure. And he was so stoic about it. And he really wasn't having a hard time breathing. He was just sitting up in his bed when I walked in the room. And my sister Barb, the baby of the family, she was working on getting a bed with hospice, and he wanted to die at home in front of the fireplace. And it was unusual that I was alone with him in this huge family. I walk in the room and he's by himself. And I walk and he goes, sit down, wait with me. They're trying to get me home, an ambulance home, and I want to die in front of the fireplace. They say I don't have long, Mary. And he said, just sit down and wait for me. So I sat down in the chair across from him, and I'm squirming in the chair. And, they had taken all the wires off of him because they were just waiting for him. They were just trying to get him home. And so he's all ready to go. And so he was just sitting up in his bed, kind of quiet, which was unusual for him. And he looked over at me, and his voice was always so burly. And I remember his voice was so soft in that moment. I'm kind of squirming in the chair. And he looks over at me and he says, you look so uncomfortable. And I looked over at him and I said, I am uncomfortable. And he said, you don't need to be. And he took his big burly hand, he had this huge hand from being a butcher all those years, all calloused and worn. And I remember he patted himself on his shoulder, and he kind of pointed his shoulder and he said, come on up here, climb on up here and snuggle with me like you did when you were a little girl, like that picture you saw of me sitting on my dad's lap. And he said, come on, you can climb up here and snuggle with me. These nurses won't care. They love me. And we'll just wait here. So I climbed up into his hospital bed, knowing he had only hours to live, and he knew he only had hours to live. And I put my head on his shoulder and I lost it. And I started crying. And I remember I was shaking and I was crying, and he could feel it and he could hear it. And he looks down at me. And again, unusual for him to have his voice so soft. And he says, Mary, are you okay? And I looked up at him and I said, no, Dad, I'm not okay. Are you okay? And I'll never forget what he said. He looked down at me and he said, yes, I'm fine. I'm proud of who I am and what I've done. I like what I see in the mirror. If this is how it ends for me, this is how it ends for me. I'm okay. And because it's always all about me, right? I looked up at him and I'm crying, and through my tears I said, good for you, Dad. Good for you. I'm glad you're okay, but I'm not okay. What am I going to do now? You're gone and Mom's gone. And what am I going to do? And I'm crying. I said, who's going to inspire me now? Who's going to inspire me now? And he just looks down at me, and without missing a beat, and he would always include my mom. And even after she passed away, he'd always include my mom in conversations like this. And I said, who's going to inspire me now? And he looks down at me and he says, oh, Mary, that's so easy. Your mother and I have taught you well. Inspire yourself. You'll figure it out. inspire yourself. And that's the last bit of wisdom he shared with me. Inspire yourself. The challenge he gave me. We got him home, you know, and I got there, and he died the following morning at 8:37 a.m. on December 21st. And I already told you the story about Christmas week. We're at the cemetery, and they lowered his casket down, and it said, "To live in hearts we leave behind is not to die." And Mandy said, "Who's going to give me Lunchmeat Life Lessons now?" And I knew exactly how I was going to inspire myself. He said, "You'll figure it out." I did. I started writing that day. And I wrote Lunchmeat Life Lessons, and I inspired myself when I did. And I breathed life into that epitaph: "To live in hearts we leave behind is not to die." And now my father lives on with good people like you, Jim. And you share his wisdom with so many. And now here we are tonight, sharing his wisdom with all your listeners. So thank you for that, because now tonight, once again, I inspired myself, and I hope that in some way, shape, or form, my father's wisdom inspired your listeners too. So thank you.
Well, Mary, see, I said in the beginning, even happened today, you'll laugh, which I was. And yes, I'm wiping away a couple of tears, even though, of course, I've read that story. It's fantastic. And, you know, thank you. I honestly, thank you for your time today and sharing this. And the cool part is too, and just so everybody knows that out there is, we record all our webinars. All of them are on our website. You can go there, and it's under resources, and go to webinars, and you'll see all 5 of them. So feel free to share this with other people who you know that aren't on this, that don't want to see this. And absolutely, I'm going to tell you right now, you know, go get Mary's book. It's on Amazon. Mary, I think, can they get it through you too?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, I don't know if anyone, the paperback is on Amazon. Sometimes when you try to order mass quantities, they'll kick it back because it's just in time. So if you have any trouble, my email address is so simple: mary@maryblucas.com. mary@maryblucas.com. And if you Google the website, you'll find videos of my dad. He shares the comebacks. If you Google John Bickelmeyer comeback sauce, there's actually, what'll pop up is a video of Dad talking about comeback sauce.
That's so great.
There's a lot of resources and stories. There's a full Over the L story and Find the Like story, and all those are on the YouTube channel. So if anyone wants to have more information, and again, I'm a phone call away and I answer my own phone. So
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I shared this with you, Mary, I share it with everybody else, is that, you know, she mentioned about the books behind, but there are several years, and right now I'm not doing that, but several years where I literally read a book a week, right? On leadership stuff, business stuff, just faith-based books, all kinds of books, right? And I will tell you, I'm going to tell you this, the book that I've bought the most is Mary's book by far. And it's clearly in my top 5, and extremely affordable. And so I just encourage everybody that's on there, get one for yourself. And here's one other thing I want to share with you. And this was really cool, Mary, I talked to you about this the other day, is that, you know, when Elizabeth, my daughter, who you've met, right? Elizabeth works here. When she got her first job, we sat down after she'd been on it for a while, and we went through your book together. And what we did is we did 3 chapters a week. So we finished it in a month's time, 4 weeks' time. And we'd read the 3 chapters, and they're easy reads. And we would sit down, you know, on that weekend and discuss, okay, let's take this. And what did you take away from this in your new job or in your personal life? And I'm telling you, we had, and Elizabeth will tell you this too, the best conversations that we've ever had as father and daughter. And it was consistent every week, which we enjoyed. And it was awesome. So, so again, encourage y'all to do that. But we're going to get to some questions here, Mary. And first of all, we got, first one's a comment. It's from Jim. I know Jim because Jim's going to be one of our industry expert webinar presenters here in a few months. Great book, Mary. Such great lessons, and your storytelling skills are spectacular.
Oh, thank you.
That's great. So, This is from Sandy. Mary, I've downloaded your book and can't wait to read it. I tell everyone I left project management to work with people. Unfortunately, corporate America doesn't always value their greatest asset, human capital. If you were talking to a CEO today, what number one piece of advice would you give them to manage their people through these turbulent times? Sandy, great question.
I think one of my favorite, when I was going through the College of Executive Coaching, I cannot even remember who I can credit this with, but one of the instructors I worked with was talking about the importance of making your thinking visible, being transparent as a leader. And I think right now, as a CEO or any leader in any organization, great leaders make their thinking visible. And so it's not easy right now during these uncertain times. And maybe what you're delivering is a message of, I don't know how, what's going to happen exactly. But let me tell you where we are right now. Let me give you an update. And even though it might be scary, it's just that no news is not good news during these uncertain COVID times. And so I think being transparent and being, when you're your authentic self as a leader in any organization and you're transparent, and people can trust you because they know you're going to keep them up to date, and they're not going to get blindsided. I think that's one of the most important things. I think, like I said, CEO or any leader can do right now. Would you agree with that, Jim?
I agree. Totally agree. Communication, transparency is so important in these kinds of times, right? People just want to know you're thinking about them, right? Even if you've got nothing dramatic to say, they want to know their leaders are there, they're thinking about the situation constantly and thinking of ways that they can help everybody get through these times the best possible. So yeah, I agree totally. Here's a question from Anonymous. Do you have any recommendations on encouraging a team of employees to stay positive during this COVID-19 time? I mean, there you go. There's another one. Anything else you want to add to that, Mary? Similar question.
Find the like. I mean, I think that's where, again, I think that there's so much more to the find the like story, but we actually had a challenge to find the like in Lisa Gray. I mean, we worked at it. So if you have not yet ever Googled appreciative inquiry questions, when there's a lot of negativity around you, you want to try to steer the conversation to the positive. And so rephrasing questions from like even simple things like how was your weekend to what was the best part of your weekend, all you can get is a positive response. So I think it's not that you don't acknowledge the negative, which I just with that last question that I answered is being transparent is incredibly important. It's also important to find the gems and what the positive things are. And I think there's a lot of positives that have come from this pandemic in terms of people connecting in a virtual world in a way they hadn't before, or finding ways to make sure you stay connected. And I think I think that's so much of what I would suggest or try to do is try to focus as much as you can on what's right and not what's wrong, finding the like. Yeah,
no, that's great. And that leads into this next question too, which is a good one. And when you talked about finding the like, and it's interesting because, and maybe it is where I got this from reading your book a long time ago, but I've always said, there's two kinds of people out there. There's those that are going to drain you, no matter what, they're going to drain you. And there's those that are going to energize you, and actually talk about some of that through our coaching program. But this person's question, I think, is real important because it's like, what's the line that you feel is being crossed perhaps or whatever, and to make decision, I've got to make the decision to just get away from this situation, right? Because of the ramifications versus continuing trying to find, because I'm now plagiarizing a little bit here, not plagiarizing, but put in words for her, but instead of continuing to try to make that relationship work and find the like, so to speak. So her question is, where's that line? And I'm assuming this is probably a pretty serious situation that she's looking
Well, and I honestly think that it goes back to, as I said earlier, is are you willing to pay the price of getting out of the relationship? And if you really look at that, if you really look at it and say, look, the price I would pay, I list it, the price I would pay by getting out of this situation or this relationship would be blank. And if you look and say, I'm willing to pay that price, because
there you go. Yeah.
not every single situation is, that's different for different people, and where their line is different for different people. I mean, sometimes if it means I can't put food on the table for my family and it's a miserable work environment I'm in, but I got to stick this out because I don't have, don't let go of one limb till you have a firm hold on another. So you're trying to figure out where you go next. And then you have to figure, I'm going to make the most of where I am. I'm going to find the like where I am. I'm going to make the most of it until I have a way to get out of this that makes sense for me. I think that's a hard question to answer because it's different for everybody. But I think the lens in which you view your decision about when you stay and when you go is the same.
Yeah.
Am I willing to pay the price to get out of this relationship, whatever that price may be? And if I am, because I'm going to be better off, then get out.
Yeah, that's a great question to ask yourself. Great question, and if you're honest, it's going to give you the answer, right? Mm-hmm. And all that. So here's a quick question: how do I get an autographed copy of your book, Mary?
Email me at mary@maryblucas.com.
Yeah, and I'll say that's Mary B. Lucas. What's the B stand for?
Bicklemeyer. I think
Jim.
When I got married, I was so super happy because, especially when you're making sales calls and you say, hi, I'd like to leave a message this is Mary Bicklemeyer. And they'd always say, okay, Mary Beth. And then I said her name. And then I thought, oh, I'm going to be Mary Lucas. And I didn't want to lose my Bicklemeyer. So I made it my middle name, but I only wanted E. And then whenever I'd call, I guess because I talk so fast, I'd say, yes, leave a message, call Mary Lucas. And they go, okay, Mary Lou. So I went from Mary Beth to Mary Lou.
Can't win, Mary. All right, we got time for a couple of more. And here's a great comment. You inspire yourself and all of us. So heartwarming. Thank you for your wisdom and for John Bicklemeyer's life lessons. I intend to use them starting now. So thank you for that comment. And then here's another one. Maybe you don't even know the answer to this, but where do you think your dad learned these lessons? Where did that come from?
I think because he was given a death sentence at an early age. He had a lung problem. Actually, and my youngest son has the same thing. My dad in those days was so lanky and tall for those, in those days. And I think he had what they called a spontaneous pneumothorax. And he couldn't serve his country, which he would have loved to have done, but he had a problem with his lungs. And so when he said, I think what hit him over the head was when he was trying to buy life insurance, when he first got married, and actuaries said, no, you won't live much past the age of 42. And his mother died at 42. So this is in his mind. I'm not going to live very long. So he lived life to its fullest. And I think he took risks that some people maybe wouldn't have done if they were, he just thought, I'm not going to have long this road. And then he laughs when he was 88 because he said, I outlived every one of those people.
That's hilarious.
But it sure gave him this, this attitude of, don't take life so seriously. You're never going to get it out of it alive anyway. So many, I love Over the L. I wish I could have told that story. I use Over the L constantly. So when you get a chance and you read the chapter Over the L.
Great chapter.
So when he lived his life, good luck, bad luck, who knows?
Yeah. All right. Here's, we got one more, if not two. So I know who this guy is, Ryan. Thanks, Mary. Jim shared this book with me and his staff about 4 years ago, and it was really powerful, not only relative to my 23 years in staffing and talent acquisition, but personally because I'm from Lewisburg, Kansas. Yes, Ryan's a big Chiefs fan too, and grew up on cattle farms. So thank you. Our corporate spirit has been challenged with the new virtual nature of our relationships. My question is, how do you best administer your comeback sauce virtually versus face-to-face?
you find ways to connect. And I mean, I think part of comeback sauce is connecting. So I know I personally have had so much fun with connecting in a different way. And, you know,
Mhm.
it might be slightly different than, you know, the usual comeback sauce recipe. But for example, one of my favorite experiences during this whole pandemic and having all of our teams work virtually was, you know, we hosted like a Zoom happy hour, and everyone had to come dressed as their favorite. You know, a lot of us are binging on Netflix or these different, so everybody had to say, come dressed as your favorite character in the show you've been watching, binging on during the pandemic. And I will tell you, there were quite a few Tiger Kings on the call. I haven't watched that show. But I mean, they had the virtual background with and so
Hilarious.
I came as this. Some of you may not know this because it's kind of a dark show, so it's kind of surprising that I watched it. But I couldn't stop watching it. But I showed up. I curled my hair real tight, and I had a denim on, and I had in one hand I had money, had a bunch of dollar bills, and the other hand I had some Tide laundry detergent. And I got on, and my virtual backdrop was a lake. And who am I? What am I doing? Money laundering. And I was Ruth from Ozark. So,
Oh gosh.
but we all went around and we had to guess who the other person was, and we laughed and laughed, and it was like, you kind of heard a little bit about other shows to watch, and so I think, you know, it's a different way of connecting, but I think finding unique ways to make connections during this time and stay connected, I think, and I'd love to hear if anybody else, please, again, you got my email address, mary@blucas.com. If you have a unique recipe for comeback sauce that you've used during the pandemic to either connect with clients or connect with your team members or make sure you're all united in this crazy world we live in right now, I'd love to hear about them.
Yeah, Mary, that's great. And I'm going to be respectful of time. So we are right at the hour. And if there's any questions that I didn't get to, I promise everybody I will get to them on email through Mary. All right. And so this will be posted in another probably 48 hours on our website. And again, I promise you, if you buy the book and don't like it, send it to me. I'll pay you for it. Okay. There's my guarantee. It's my tip of the day.
You're the biggest fan, Jim. Thank you so much.
I am. Well, you know, I'll tell you what. It's simple. It's great. I've gotten a lot out of it, and so have the other people I've shared. So that's easy to talk about it and feel good about it. So, Mary, thank you again so much. And yeah, I'm going to end this by thanking Mary. Y'all are going to enjoy her book. I promise you. Our next industry expert webinar series is September 9th. And I'm just going to tell you this right now. Rusty Sherwood, who is a great friend. Rusty's principal of FMI Consulting, and his topic is on leading high performance teams. So a little bit different take here. Rusty, I've known for years. I think so highly of him. He's on my advisory board, probably one of the brightest business people I've ever met strategically and in a lot of other ways. And really excited to have Rusty. I'm going to say this, though, that he may have a conflict with work. We're talking through that. And if so, that's okay. He's still going to do one down the road, and we're going to update you if we have a change there. But very excited about having Rusty. And so thank you, everybody, for your time. Mary, have a great rest of the week. And we really appreciate you, girl. Thank you very much.
And I'm so grateful you asked me to join. Thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great rest of the week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.